All right. Hello, hello. It is 8 o'clock, so let's get started. My name is Jerry, and I'll be your instructor tonight for tonight's free prep hour. It's my first time doing this, so I'm excited. Hopefully, we got something out of it. So before we get started, why don't you just type to me in the chat, where are you calling in from, and how long have you been studying for the GRE? While you're typing that into the chat, I'll stall for you a little bit and say, cool, Malika's just starting, great. Awesome. Cool, we have people right at the beginning, that's fantastic. Oh, this is so good. This is so good. We got Houston, we got San Francisco. I'm in Western Massachusetts, so we've got a good triangle across the country. Other folks, how long have you been studying for? Where are you calling in from? Okay, it's all right if you're shy in the chat right now, but I'll say there's going to be a lot of interaction tonight. New Hampshire, fantastic. So if you're looking to just like watch a video on how to do stuff, that's not going to be this. I'm going to have you thinking a lot and doing a lot of problems. So be prepared for that, have something to take notes with, and let's have a lively conversation in the chat. I'd really like that at least. So my name is Jerry, as I said. I've been an instructor with Manhattan Prep for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, something like that. When I'm not doing that, I'm a writer. I write plays and poems. And something I care a lot about as a writer is word choice and finding the right word to say the right thing. And that's what I wanted to focus on today with regards to the verbal section, in particular, the vocab questions on this exam, the text completion and sentence equivalence. I want to focus on kind of the basics for our process for these, and in particular, focusing on what is, in my opinion, the most important aspect of these, which is knowing what you're looking for. A lot of people get to these vocab questions and think, oh my God, I don't know the words, and that's the beginning and the end of it. And they're like, I need to study more vocab. And like, yes, you do. Everybody does. I do. And knowing all the vocab in the world will not get you a single one of these right. So we're going to focus on process and strategy and think about how do we approach these as good GRE test takers as opposed to just people who know a lot of words. So we're going to start out by looking at some verbal process overall, and then we're going to focus for a while on text completion and then move on to sentence equivalence. And if you have any experience with these, which if you've been studying for 2 days, maybe you don't, they're pretty similar, but we'll get to see kind of what the differences are as well. So to start with, text completion, TC, text completion. This is the format. We get a sentence, we get a blank, we get choices. And our goal is always the same, is to find the choice that best fits the meaning of the whole sentence. This is the prompt that they give us. And the question is, how do we do this? And if you're like me, when you first saw these, your first thought was, okay, I read the sentence, and I plug in the choices, and I see which choice best fits the sentence, which one works the best. I want to just invite you to do that for a second here. And you might notice, okay, the boy's stomach was empty. That makes sense. Boy's stomach was cold. Sure, why not? The boy's stomach was fine. Okay. The boy's stomach was hurting. Also okay. The boy's stomach was missing. Interesting, right? Maybe there's an organ transplant gone wrong or something, but it makes sense. Okay, so we have one person in the chat saying hurting, but I would say empty makes just as much sense here. And it's important that hurting, empty, fine, cold, missing, that all of these make sense here. Because this tells us this can't be a GRE problem. This is unfair and impossible. It comes down to a matter of opinion. Maybe Amrita thinks hurting makes sense. Maybe I think missing makes sense. We could both be right. So what this tells us is they have, because this is a standardized test and it's not about opinions, they have to write these questions in such a way that there can only be one correct answer. So let me change it now. Now this is fair. And now I want to give you a second. Try this again, just kind of on your own before I talk about how to do these. And now go through and send me which answer you think is the best. Good. So we're getting some votes for D, hurting, which would indeed be the right answer here. And let's think about why. In this rewriting, we now have what we could call a clue. After eating 10 pieces of pie, oh, that's really important. That tells us something about the boy. And then the boy complained because his stomach was hurting. Okay, so the information that's already in the sentence is going to determine for us which one has to be the right answer. So it's no longer a matter of opinion. Now, it's important that we're not adding new ideas. I had somebody once, I showed this, and a student was like, what if the boy he eats 10 pieces of pie and then he complains because his stomach is still empty? He could eat so much more pie. He's ready for it. He loves pie. And like, yeah, that makes sense. That's a cool story. But the problem is, it's a story. I'm now adding something. This word empty now changes the meaning of the sentence, turns it into a story that's not already being told. We actually want our answer to be the most boring, obvious one that there is. Our answer should change the sentence in no way. We're looking for redundancy, in other words. So what this tells us is, when we're trying to answer these, if we go in with that intuitive method that I started with, of plugging all these in and seeing what works, we're setting ourselves up for trouble. Because these test makers are smart and they're trying to trick you. That's their job. And if you just plug these in, you're going to find what I found when I did that, which is they're kind of all going to work, or they're all going to work for different reasons. And you're going to be able to justify each one. But if you're doing the justifying, that's not what the test wants. The test wants you to repeat what they've already said. So that tells us the really important thing for us to do going into these is to know, before we even look at these choices, what does the sentence want? The analogy I like to use here is if you're going shopping. I'm not a very good shopper, but when I go shopping, if I go in and I don't know what I'm looking for, that's when I end up walking out with, like, I don't know, 3 pairs of orange pants and like a sweater that doesn't really fit. Or if I'm going food shopping, it's like I end up with a big basket of radishes that looks nice at the time, but I have nothing to do with. Instead, the same is true on this test, right? If you go in and you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to end up getting the wrong stuff. So you want to go in with a shopping list. You want to say, okay, this is the word that I need. Which of these choices gives it to me? This is going to lead us to what I would say is the good way to move through any verbal problem on this test. So we can think of 3 steps. The first step is the step that I would encourage you to do at the beginning of every problem on the test, quant or verbal, which is PDA, like what you're not supposed to do in high school. PDA, put your pencil down, take a deep breath, and actually read. And in this case, read the whole sentence. Just read it like you're reading a text message or something, right? Just see like what's there. Don't try to think about what's the answer. Don't try to untangle it. Just read it. Just say hello. Then our movement through the problem, once we've prepared in this way and centered ourselves, we're now going to move through the problem in 2 phases. And these 2 phases are going to be true for all of verbal. Predict, eliminate. Remember that as PE, like phys ed. PDA, PE. So to predict, what we're going to do is we read the sentence. We're going to prepare our page. I'll show you how to do that. Understand the context. What kind of word am I looking for? What's going on? What in the sentence is telling me what's going on? And we're going to get really fine-grained about this today. And then you're going to write your own fill-in. You're going to say, what do I think should go in there? This is before you've looked at any of the answer choices. So then with your shopping list, with your fill-in, you're going to go to eliminate answers. And notice that word eliminate is important. You may not find the word you're looking for, but maybe you find 4 words that definitely aren't it. So you're now going to look at every choice one by one, and you're going to compare each choice to your fill-in and say, not is it the exact same word, because that's 1 in a million chance, but does it mean the same thing? Does it do the work that my fill-in does? You're going to judge swiftly, honestly, and mercilessly. This is not a time for dilly-dallying. And as you go through, you're going to mark them with a check if it's a good match, an X if it's not a good match, a squiggle if it's like so-so. You're like, it kind of means that, kind of doesn't. And then a question mark if you don't know the word. And this is really important because oftentimes you're going to not know words. And your goal in eliminating is to set yourself up to take the best guess that you can. This can sometimes be frustrating to people who are just starting on the test, but a lot of the times on verbal especially, you're going to have maybe 70, 80% confidence in your answer, and that's about as good as it's going to get, and that's a win. And so even if you get it down to 2 choices and you pick the wrong one, you did everything right. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself though. Let's go back to our boy and his stomach. And let's think about how can we analyze this sentence to know what we're looking for. So I want to now introduce 3 words for you of what we're looking for. If our question is, how do we write good fill-ins? How do we find the right fill-in? We're going to look for 3 things. The first is called the target. This is what the blank is about, what it's describing, what it's concerning. In this case, our target is going to be the stomach. His stomach was blank. We're describing the stomach. We may say the sentence is about the boy, but the target of the blank is the stomach. We then want to look for clues. Clues are going to tell us about the target or words related to the target. So, okay, so we know the stomach is blank. All right, what are our clues here? We're told that the boy ate 10 pieces of pie. Oops, wrong color. The boy ate 10 pieces of pie. We also know that he complained. These 2 things are going to tell us something about what's going on with the stomach. We then want to ask, are there any pivots? These are going to determine the relationship between the clues and the blank. So it might be the opposite. It might be the same. There might be no pivots. In this case, there's no pivot. We don't see like, after eating 10 pieces of pie, the boy complained that his stomach wasn't, for instance, or if they were like, but, or on the other hand, or something like that, that would pivot. We're going to see some of those coming up. So we look for these three things, and based on these all together, we write a fill-in. And that fill-in doesn't need to be just one word. It's great if you come up with just like the right word, fine. But if you're sitting there and like, what's a really good word for like not feeling good? Whatever, just write like something about not feeling good because you ate too much. And I wouldn't necessarily write all of this down on my paper, but I'd write down something to this effect. And I'd actually write it down because I'm now going to use this as an anchor. And I'm like, all right, something about not feeling good. I'm now going to check this against these. Empty, well, empty is not feeling good, but it doesn't line up with this 10 pieces of pie thing. I don't like it. Cold, unrelated. Fine, that's the opposite of what I want. Hurting, yeah, that's not feeling good. You ate too much. Missing, unrelated. And sometimes it's going to happen where like maybe this last word is a word I don't know, and that's okay. But I go through each of them, marking them as I go. So we're going to try this now, and we're going to work through step by step on a problem. So start. Ooh, can I move all these away? Yes. All right, start. We take a deep breath. And our first step is prepare your page. Oh man, my text is all over the place here. Prepare the page. And so before I do anything, I'm going to write on my page A, B, C, D, E. You can do it north, south like this. You can do it east, west. It doesn't matter. But I have a question number. I make myself a blank where I'm going to write my fill-in, and I write A, B, C, D, E because I'm going to keep track of my choices doing this. So once my paper is prepared, and I would encourage you to do this, I'm now going to look at my sentence. And I'm going to cover up the answers as I do so. I'm just going to read it. And I want you to take a minute, read the sentence, and see if you can figure out what's the target. So send me in the chat, what's the target of this blank? And if you're confused, you can also let me know you're confused. I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you. I've got one answer here in the Q&A. Love to hear from other people. What do we think the target is? You can either send it to everybody or you can send it just to me. It's nice. Great. So Amrita is coming up with a fill-in here. She's kind of getting ahead of us a little bit. And I think that's a nice fill-in, but what I'm really gonna break this down into a lot of steps just to say, where did Amrita get that from? How can we get there? So I'm hearing two different things. Some people are saying charms, some people are saying Paris. And I would say kind of both. To me, it seems even the blank and alluring charms of Paris. I would say charms of Paris, maybe charms, doesn't really make a difference. We could take this out, right? The blank charms of Paris, doesn't really matter what you say. So if that's our target, we now want to read through the rest of the sentence and ask, does this word or words related to this come up anywhere? And I wonder if anybody sees, does this target or words related to this target repeat anywhere in this sentence? Great. We've got the American charms. So this isn't always going to happen, but it's fairly common, actually. It's not always going to be the case you're going to get the exact same word, but you want to see, like, is there a parallel somewhere? So now we want to say, okay, what are our clues? Well, we're told the charms of Paris are alluring. And if we also look over here, the charms of his American home are quaint and they're simple. We also see this word yearning might help us. Then we want to say, okay, is there a pivot? And I wonder if anybody sees if there's a pivot in this sentence. Yeah, great. They're not sufficient. Okay, so that tells us we have a contrast between, on one hand, the blank and alluring Paris, and on the other hand, the simple and quaint rural American home. So that tells us what we're looking for is something combining all these things. So something that's like alluring, not simple, not quaint. Maybe I write that down. Sophisticated is a great word. I love that. I love that. So sometimes you're able to just like come up with a great word like Abrita is. I wasn't able to. And so I'm just kind of being very literal. And I kind of like to do that sometimes, because sometimes if I try to come up with a word, it either takes too much effort or I end up kind of swerving off in the wrong direction. So now we know exactly what we're looking for. And now we're going to go through our choices and compare, kind of forget about the sentence and just think about which of these is going to match our target over here, our fill-in, excuse me. And when you have it, please send me the answer. Okay, so we go through and maybe we don't know what lascivious means and we might panic, and that's normal. Or you can just say, all right, cool. I'm just going to put a question mark there. Often you're not going to know at least one word. So I put a question mark here. I see sophisticated. I'm like, that's pretty nice. But I keep going. I'm going to keep looking. Foreign. Well, aren't foreign things alluring? They're not simple. They're not quaint because they're foreign. Well, no, they're just foreign. That's adding a lot of meaning here. That's adding a lot of interpretation. We want to avoid that. Same with alien and alienating. So, okay, I've got a word that I like, but there's this word I don't know. Could this possibly be better? Maybe, but if I don't know it, we got to move on. Swift and merciless. So we pick choice B, which is our actual answer. Lascivious kind of means like scandalous. Doesn't really work here. So we pick sophisticated, and then our last step, we'll read it all together to check. Even the sophisticated and alluring charms of Paris were not sufficient to cure the young expatriate of his yearning for the simple and quaint charms of his rural American home. Excellent. I've got my 2 adjectives here, contrasting the simple and quaint. Choice B works. It adds no new meaning, and I like it, and I move on. So, to recap that process, we started with PDA, pencil down, deep breath, actually read the whole sentence. And then we moved to PE, predict and eliminate. And so to predict, we prepare the page, understand the context, write a fill-in using target, clues, and pivots. And this analysis, target, clue, pivot, the test is never going to ask you about these terms. And when you get to the point when you're ready to take the test, you're not going to think about these very much. But in the same way that if you're learning an instrument, for instance, you may be thinking very, very carefully about where your fingers go and how you curl them on the bow of the violin or something. And that's going to be a very conscious action that maybe you have a lot of things your teacher is telling you to do with your fingers. Eventually, you get to a point where you can just play and you're not thinking about it. That's the case with these. So I'm giving you all of this work and giving you these terms to slow you down, because I really often see students come in here and they just kind of pick the word they like, and maybe that works for them 60% of the time. And that's cool, but we want to get to where it works 90% of the time. So I'm making you think through this on a more rigorous step-by-step basis to build your awareness and build your skills so that eventually you can just play without thinking. So we write our fill-in using target, clue, and pivot, and then we eliminate choices. We look at every choice one by one, comparing that choice to the fill-in, judging swiftly, honestly, and mercilessly, marking the ones we like, the ones we don't like, the ones we feel so-so on, and the ones we don't know. Any questions before we try another one? Okay, so let's take a deep breath. Step 1, prepare your page. Step 2, we're going to read the sentence and write your own fill-in using target, clue, and pivot. Amrita, I see your question in the chat. I'm going to get to it in a little bit, okay? So, see if you can identify, oh, that's ugly. Send me private in the chat. What is the target first? Okay. Excellent, Abrita. Very good, very good. Abrita says, things that architecture must consider. Yes. So this one is harder than the last one we did. Before, it was like, okay, the boy's stomach was blank. The target is the stomach. Or in the last one, it was, God, what was that sentence even about? Right? The blank charms of Paris, right? But here, now the blank is a noun. It's a more important word. So let's just notice, first of all, one of the ways these get more difficult is that the blank gets put in a more important place in the sentence. So sometimes the target could kind of be the blank itself. I really like how Abrita said this, right? So our target is what architects must consider. That's what we're looking for. And that's really helpful. So now, okay, what does the sentence tell us about what architects must consider? So go through, see if you can find any clues. Cool, so we've got this word functionality. They have to consider something in addition to functionality. What else do we see? Oh, I see Nate is saying we got beauty and architectural needs. So we've got functionality, practicality, and beauty and blank. So let's also notice, wait a second, we've got kind of a parallel here. Blank and functionality, beauty and practicality. Okay, so now our question is, are these going to be the same or opposite? So now we want to look for pivots. Are there any pivots here that tell us we're looking for the same thing or the opposite thing? Cool, Amrita's wondering, okay, we've got this more than, does that mean opposite? And just to be clear about my question, I'm asking, is this blank, if we've got functionality matches with practicality, is this blank going to be the same or opposite of beauty? Okay, we're getting some disagreement here. Getting some disagreement. So we have this clients often base their decisions, but it's like this more than. Okay, so we need to kind of understand this. I would say this word as becomes pretty important here as well. So what's going on with this more than, right? So they base their decisions more on beauty than on practicality. Okay, so beauty and practicality are sort of put on opposite ends of a coin here. How does that affect what's going on up here? Okay, but this is as well as, is that going to be the opposite? I don't know. Okay, I'm seeing people in the chat saying the same, and I would agree, right? So they have to consider these two things because clients base their decisions on this more than this. Okay, so you have to consider this as well as this because they use this more than this. The more than ends up actually, it's kind of a little bit of a red herring. And I would say this clients often base their decisions tells us, okay, this is going to be the same. These same two things are showing up here. So here we're in kind of a great position where we can just reuse a word straight from the passage. And that's going to be our fill-in. And now, cover up the sentence and just pick the one that we like based on this. So I want to encourage you, go through each of these, mark the ones you like, the ones you don't like, the ones that feel so-so, and any question marks if you have them, and then send me your answers when you have it, please. Got answers rolling in. If you haven't yet sent me an answer, send me one, please. Okay, so maybe we don't know this word. Utility. Notice that's the same as functionality. So this is a trap. We're looking for something that means beauty. Utility means like use. That's not the same as beauty. So if we really stick to just comparing this to this, and if we know the word, we might be able to tell this is wrong. Is price the same as beauty? Not necessarily. Things could be very expensive and very ugly, or vice versa. Is aesthetics the same as beauty? Yeah. Is profundity the same as beauty? Maybe I don't know what that word means. Okay. So now we get to a point that Amrita asked at the beginning of this problem. What are the chances that in a case like this, we still get it wrong because we didn't know those other words? It's not a 0% chance, but you have to ask yourself, how well do I know this word? Is this a word where I'm like, I think it means beauty? Or am I like, yeah, I know that's right. That's the right word. That means beauty. That's what I was looking for. If that's the case, you know you got this right. Move on. Pat yourself on the back. You did it. Doesn't matter that they threw words at you you didn't know. But sometimes it's going to happen where you have something like this. And at this point, flip a coin, pick one, move on. There's no use sitting there trying to figure out what these words mean if you don't know what they mean. So you might be like, why did I put in all that work? Well, because we knew what we were looking for, we were able to at least eliminate 2 answers. Getting it into a 1 in 3 guess is actually really good. Because, and I know some of you have just started studying, and this is a way bigger topic, but this test is not designed for you to get everything right. And if you're taking the test, trying to get every question right, you're actually taking the test in the wrong way. So instead, we need to think about, I need to maximize my chances of getting as many of them right as I can. And so putting in the work to know what I'm looking for and then take a smart guess based on that is doing everything correct. But in this case, I'm going to say, let's say we know this is the right word. Even though there's these ones I don't know, I'm not going to be tempted by them. I'm going to stick with what my match is. And then when I plug it in, I recognize they have to consider aesthetics as well as functionality. Good, those are different things. Matches up with what customers need, which is beauty more than practicality. So aesthetics is important. And that's our right answer. Any questions or thoughts based on what we've done so far? Okay. So we start with PDA. We move to predict and eliminate. Preparing the page, understanding the context, and writing a fill-in. I'll get to you in 1 second, Nate. We then look at every choice, comparing the choices to our fill-in, swiftly, honestly, and mercilessly, marking as we go. Now, we're going to look at a 2 blank text completion. So far, we've been looking at 1 blank text completions. They come in 2 and 3 blank varieties as well. And we're going to use the same strategies, but the only additional thing is try to start with the blank that looks easiest. So Nate asks, is verbal extremely vocab heavy? Kinda. The questions that we're looking at occupy half of the verbal section. And so you definitely need to know vocab in order to do them. But as I'm trying to emphasize today, vocab is only a part of the battle. It's more about, can you understand a sentence and know what the sentence needs? So it's really still more of a reading and logic test than it is straight vocab. Another question here, how many new vocab do you suggest learning every day? I mean, as many as you can. You know, I think if you can learn like 40 new words a week, you're going to be in really good shape. So there are plenty of apps you can get for this. Flashcards are the way to go. There are some other free prep hours about like tips for learning vocab. I'd suggest checking out the YouTube page. But I would say like, it's the kind of thing you need to put in a little bit of work every day. And it can sometimes be frustrating because you can put in all that work and still see lots of words you don't know. And that's going to happen. I promise you. So we need to still just approach these with good strategy rather than only relying on vocab. But at the same time, all the strategy without any vocab, you're not going to be in a great position. So let's try to act strategically. Oh, we got another question here. What if the sentence is vocab heavy, twisting, and we aren't able to come up with a fill-in word? How do we navigate through that? Great question. In that case, try to see if you can find something more general. Ask, okay, am I looking for a positive or a negative word? Can I figure that out? And then if I'm really super stumped, guess and move on. This is too hard, not worth it. And that's a perfectly fair reaction. And in fact, if you're doing that on the test, you're doing the test right. So first thing is ask something more general. Can I find like positive or negative? Then if I really am like, I can't even figure that out, move on. So let's try another one now. Take a deep breath. This is going to be our first 2 blank text completion. So prepare your page and notice there's only going to be 3 choices for each one. For these 2 blank ones, there's no partial credit. There's no partial credit anywhere on the test. So this counts just as much as the 1 blank one, which is interesting. So prepare your page. And then I want you to see if you can do this whole thing yourself and just send me your fill-ins. But I would suggest start with the easier blank. Okay, so as we're analyzing this, we might say, okay, the target for the first one is what Joseph expected to immediately become. And the blank for the second is what he remained. Our clues. We see that he's a perfectionist. Let's actually just start with this first one. So he's a perfectionist. He expected immediately to become something perfect, I would say. I'm getting other answers that I really like that are probably smarter than something perfect, but I try to be a little dumb with these actually. It can be helpful. And then we learn he was downtrodden when he remained blank despite his best efforts. We might even call that despite kind of a pivot, really. So, okay, that tells us, and this downtrodden sort of acts pivot E as well, though usually I like to say pivots are just words like but or also. So we see there's a contrast here. So he's downtrodden because he's remained imperfect. And okay, I have these fill-ins and I'm going to hold them very loosely. I'm not looking for this exactly, but I'm looking for something in this general range. Something in this general range. I'm getting a lot of answers in the chat that feel similar to this. And now let's look at our choices and send me your 2 answers, one from this column, one from this column, when you have them. Okay. So going through, we might be encountering some words we don't know. Maybe there are other words you don't know. But maybe we can get rid of things, right? So musician is not necessarily perfect. And maybe I don't know what a hack is, in which case I'm going to take a guess here. Now, if I tell you a hack is like a really like a low quality phony, say like a hack writer, it's like, oh, he just writes trash. It's a hack writer. That's not really what we want. We want somebody perfect. Whereas a virtuoso is somebody who is like a technical expert. You talk about like a virtuoso violin player can play incredible runs beautifully. That works. Something perfect. If we want something imperfect, well, novel means new, but not new as in like, I'm a novice. Novel is like, oh, that's novel. That's interesting. I haven't heard that before, right? Like you read a novel because it's interesting. It's new. It doesn't really work here. Again, maybe we don't know these words and we take a guess. But inept means like bad at something. Inane is like empty, all surface. Like an inane conversation. Oh my God, they're still talking about traffic. It's so inane. Inept is going to be our right answer. Now, so C and F are going to be it. And if we plug those in and we know these words, you'll see that it works. Maybe at this point you're feeling frustrated because maybe you're like, wait a second, we did all that work and then I didn't know a lot of these words and I ended up guessing and getting it wrong. Okay. If you did this work right, that was our goal today. And it's really important as you study for this exam. And some of you are saying, I've been studying for 2 days, 4 days. It's really, really important to celebrate your wins at every step. It's frustrating that this exam is set up that a question is right or wrong. You got it right or you got it wrong. And it's very easy to feel like, wait a second, I put in all that work and I still got it wrong. How do I get it right? Okay, yes, we want to get it right because we want to get the points. But given that we are learning, and many of you are at the very beginning of learning, we have to recognize, okay, even if I didn't get the problem all the way correct, how much of it did I get? Was it more than I could do yesterday? I'm not sure maybe you were already doing this, in which case, fantastic. If this is something new for you and you were able to do something like this, that's awesome. And as you're studying, if you're able to get the right fill-in, but you end up getting it wrong because you don't know the vocab, you still need to count that as a win and put in the work to study the vocab. But recognize that as these get harder, it's not just the vocab that gets harder. And for the most part, it is that the sentences get harder. The blanks come in stranger places or more important places. The sentences have lots of switchbacks and turns and lots of pivots, and it's hard to tell what you need or even what the sentence is saying. These are still reading questions. So the more you can practice this skill of reading and analysis and prediction, the better shape you're going to be in. Just learning vocab is like if you went to the gym a ton to try to become a better football player. Yes, to be a good football player, you need big muscles. But if all you have is big muscles and you can't catch a football, you're not a very good football player. So this is the skill we need. This is the raw stuff. You need to work on both. And my focus today was to try to help you introduce you to this skill. So I want to encourage you to keep practicing this as you keep working and take your time with it. You'll get speed eventually. But for now, really think through, what's the target? What's the clues? Are there pivots? What do those lead me to think? Thinking through in this detailed analytic way is a way of avoiding doing the kind of like autocomplete read. Perfectionist in all things, he expected to immediately become a really cool guy. Yeah, that makes sense. Was downtrodden indeed when he remained on roller skates. I'm not saying anybody's going to do that, but it's very easy to just kind of read these and pick a word that sounds nice. That's not what we're doing. We're saying, what does the sentence tell us that we need? Okay. We're almost at time, and I want to leave some time for you all to ask some questions. So yeah, we've got about 10 minutes. Happy to answer questions about anything we talked about today or anything about the GRE, studying. Everything is fair game. So how can I help? Malika asks, how long do you usually need to study for? It's a great question. So normally when I teach classes for Manhattan Prep, those classes are 9 weeks long. And in those 9 weeks, we go through kind of all the stuff on the test. And at the end of those 9 weeks, I tell my students, okay, time to keep studying. And I suggest they take another month before they take the exam for the first time. And I say the first time because I expect them to take it more than once. So in overall, the average would be probably 3 or 4 months, if not longer. This is going to depend in part based on like how prepared are you already? How rusty is this material? How easy is it for you out the gate? We're all coming at this in different places. So some people may feel like I need to study for a year, and that's totally great. Some people may feel like 3 months is enough for me. But I would say it's important to keep in mind, like this is a long haul. So consistency is really, really helpful. Good habits are really, really helpful. Taking good notes are really, really helpful. It's not the kind of thing you can cram for and figure out quickly. How much effort would you put into studying before it's not worth it? Oof, it's a good and difficult question. I think the effort you put in needs to be smart effort. This is the big thing. If you're just trying to do lots and lots of questions, that's a really bad way to study. We need to always be practicing deliberately. So what that means is say, okay, I'm going to try to get better at coming up with fill-ins for vocab and focusing on that. Or I need to get better at absolute value problems and focusing on that. Not, I'm going to take a practice exam every day and try to get better that way. That's not going to do anything for you. The students that I've had who try to just grind through tons and tons of problems end up not making improvement. If in fact, they usually get worse. It's the ones who are really good at pinpointing particular skills and working to build piece by piece a skill set are the ones that make improvement. And that takes a while. When will be our next class like this? Well, I hope that means this was helpful. I'm actually not sure. I'm going to teach one about a month from now. I don't know if there's another one this month, to be honest with you, and I'm sorry about that. But if you hang out after we're done, I'll look up the schedule. I just don't want to waste everybody's time Googling it right now. I need to ask, will there be a follow-up class to the one we had today? Similar question. There won't be another class based on exactly this, although maybe I could teach something related to this next month. These happen every couple of weeks, and every time it's an hour of a lesson that whatever the instructor chooses. So I wanted to teach this because I like this, but they're all different. But I would also say like there's a full YouTube treasure trove of these past lessons. So you can go through and see like, all right, what are the other verbal lessons, or what are the other ones on anything really? But you can get a lot of free help that way. Did I dream of being a GRE tutor when I was little? No, but this is a good job. Any difference between 2 words and 3-word fill-ins in terms of strategy? Yes. I would say the first thing is like, I often save the 3 blank fill-ins for last. They take longer, they're harder, there's no partial credit, and they're just worth 1 point like anything else. So I save them for last because they're not worth any more. But the second thing is for the 3 blank ones, I tend to take more time reading the whole thing first, almost like it's a short reading comp passage, and just make sure, like, do I understand the story that's being told here before I try to find the fill-ins? Because oftentimes with those 3 blank ones, it's like, okay, the first blank is up here, but actually the info for it is all the way down here at the end of a paragraph, and I have to read the whole thing first. Any other questions about what we've done today, or anything else? Great. Well, I hope this has been helpful. Again, I want to encourage you to check out the YouTube page, see what the other lessons are. Good. You've all been very pleasant to work with tonight. I hope you, I wish you the best of luck in your studying, and yeah, best of luck, and thank you.